Welcome to the Old Pueblo New Economy podcast, which covers a wide range of stories and the innovators that help shape our regional economies. From the rising stars with Nick Morin to the creative community with Julie Bonner, to Mentor Me Live and regional investor deep dives with Aaron Eden. We are one platform, showcasing the diverse voices of our local community. We are the Old Pueblo New Economy. I'm your host, Julie Bonner, for this creative community episode. Listen to conversations with inspiring creative entrepreneurs right here in Tucson. I'm also a local artist, designer, and marketing director, and here to learn along with you. My goal is that you can apply some of these lessons learned into your own best practices. Let's turn up the creativity, Tucson. Songwriter Adan Townsend is like an awesome mixtape of old and new. His original music feels nostalgic and welcoming, and it makes you want to stop what you're doing and smile. Despite his relaxed demeanor, Adam's also a go-getter, and he's planning for the future. You'll hear how he accomplished his dream of recording a full-length album, All My Fires, from his successful Kickstarter campaign to recording it in Nashville to the challenges of promoting it. We also learn about how his song ended up playing in the Starbucks playlist rotation and what his future goals are. We are so lucky to have this Tucson natives talent right here, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Hi everyone, it's Julie Bonner with Old Pueblo New Economy, and I wanted to welcome our special guest today, musician Adan Townsend. Hi Adam.
Hey, how's it going?
Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, happy to be here. Sounds cool.
Hey, yeah, it's gonna be fun. So Adam is an amazing musician that I've heard a few times, and I wanted to make sure that you were on the show to give us your perspective about being a music professional and talk about your journey and your future and all that stuff. So better way to start off is kind of more about the background of your music career. Can you tell us some more?
Yeah, and really quick, I'm gonna go ahead and pop my do not disturb on my phone.
Oh, it's a good idea.
Just so I don't get like a phone call.
Yeah, sure.
So a little bit about me. So I am actually a Tucson native, born here, raised, went to the U of A, graduated, all that fun stuff. Been a musical person my whole life, singing since I was a child, and both of my parents are, my dad especially is a musician. He performed, semi-professionally his whole life, and my mom was always musical. She could play the piano and stuff like that. So I definitely grew up around it all. And, started playing guitar in high school, but I didn't really, dive into it until like college. I had met a good friend who he was playing quite a bit and writing, which was something that was new for me. I had never written before. And so we kind of started writing songs together back and forth. And it was a fun little kind of learning project. We started recording some of our songs, and that kind of, I guess I got the bug, kind of, so to speak, from our partnership. And then, I was focused on finishing college, but kind of had this new fascination with songwriting and producing music. And so I finished college and moved to San Diego and had dreams of playing and performing out there and building a career up. But, I got married, and my wife and I had a baby, and we have a beautiful 6-year-old boy now. And then, life just got in the way, and I was working professionally out there and I loved what I was doing. I was working with autistic kids doing behavioral therapy. It's really cool stuff, fun work. And I played a little bit, from time to time out in San Diego, but I just the timing was never quite right. And so fast forward a couple of years, my mother-in-law actually passed away, and after a long battle with breast cancer. And so shortly after that, we decided to move back to Tucson, back home. And my wife's kind of loosely based. She has a lot of family that live in Tucson. And so kind of brought us back here, and that's really where it all kind of started to happen. I started to really dive into music, and because my career in San Diego had kind of ended, and the type of work I was doing out there wasn't really as common in Tucson. So I kind of really decided at that point, and I was like, well, maybe now's the time to, start to pursue music in a meaningful way. So.
And when you're in San Diego, was that a little more of like commercial music that you're trying to do, or was it still kind of your own stuff? Or
No, I didn't really have a good grasp on what I was doing. I just knew that I wanted to write and perform. And sometimes artists can, do one or the other or both. I really wanted to do both. I wanted to be a performing artist, songwriter. But I was very inexperienced, and I still am. I'm still learning a lot. So.
Well, you come off like a professional to me, and I know that from playing music myself, the more you do it, especially live shows, the more you learn, and I
Right.
You can look back at certain things and be like, that was really embarrassing that like my old band did that, or whatever. And then you play guitar. For people that don't know you, you sing, you songwrite, and you also play guitar, and you've been playing for a while, right? Guitar.
Yeah, since I was in high school, so I guess it's coming up on 20 years now. I've been playing guitar.
That's crazy.
And that's weird to think about.
Yeah.
Play guitar. Started playing piano after that. I'm not really a piano player, but I can bang around on the piano and fool people into thinking I can play the keyboard and stuff.
And your dad, he plays drums too, right?
Yeah, he's a drummer.
That's so cool.
Yeah, he actually plays with me from time to time when I need a percussion fill in.
Sweet. That's awesome. Yeah. So then fast forward, so I want to talk about the album. It was a big deal. When did you decide finally in your head, like, I'm ready to make like my big album?
I think when I first moved back to Tucson, which is a little over 4 years ago, and I hadn't really fully formed what I was doing at that point, but I knew that I did want to release an album eventually. It's always been a long time dream of mine. And I'd been writing for many years before that. But I think about 2 years after I had been back home performing, and I started playing all over town and really was actually making a pretty good living playing music, just doing gigs all over the city. It felt like a good time to kind of put that process in motion. And so I decided to do like a Kickstarter, crowdfunding campaign, and kind of just all rolled from there.
I saw that, and I loved some of the different kind of perks and things you offered. Can you talk about, kind of, for anyone else that's thinking about doing a Kickstarter campaign, like, what was your process like? I saw you offered some really unique, fun things on there. And how did it turn out?
It turned out great. I mean, I hit my goal, so I mean,
that's awesome.
Complain with that. But from what I had learned, researched, you really want to make it as personal as possible. So things that are important to you, not just as a musician, but just you as a person. So some of my rewards on there were things like a pancake recipe, because I love pancakes. And then one was like, I'll make people a specific playlist, which was a CD, like a mixed CD, which is how we did it. I even did cassette tapes in high school.
Yes.
But things like that. Things like personalized handwritten notes of the lyrics and stuff like that. House concerts. There's a bunch of like common ones that people will do, but it's important to throw in a couple that are specific to you and your personality.
Did anyone take you up on some of those really like unique ones that you did?
Yeah, I think I did maybe like 8 to 10 of the pancake recipe ones.
Cool.
And I think a handful of the handwritten lyrics, and then a couple the mixtapes, and then a couple of the bigger ones, like some people did like house concerts and stuff like that, which was awesome.
And that's so cool. And how long was that process? I forgot to look when I was checking it out, of the whole, when you launched the Kickstarter thing to when you met your goal.
Maybe like 3 months, I want to say. I really wanted to plan as much ahead before I even launched the Kickstarter, because I've had other musician friends who have run campaigns have told me that you want to get as big of an impact on the platform in the first like 48 hours as you can.
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually get picked up by Kickstarters, their editors and people that they like to feature, cool and interesting projects and stuff. So yeah, I did a lot of planning, did a lot of like emailing my mailing list of people, kind of prep people for this was coming. And then I spent a good amount of time, probably about a month, actually just making the video for the campaign, which is a really important part of it.
Oh, that's really cool. So it's definitely a lot more kind of behind the scenes work than probably most realize, just to get that like prepared to start fundraising, I guess.
Yeah, I've unfortunately seen a lot of friends fail on Kickstarter, just because they didn't plan it out enough.
Yeah, that's a really good tip for any kind of person that's thinking about doing something like that. And so then you met your goal, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then it meant, okay, it's time to, I guess, go and record. Had you recorded yet, or
Mm-hmm.
then you? Yeah,
it was time to go and record. And before I had run the Kickstarter, I had actually secured a studio and a producer that I wanted to hire. And so he agreed to work with me. And then I told him, I said, okay, well, I'll get back to you when I have the money.
right.
And so I hit the goal, and then I, reached out to the studio, and we scheduled the time to go, record and everything. And that was about 3 months after the Kickstarter had ended. So, I couldn't put down a deposit to secure the time until after I had the Kickstarter money.
It's the cart before the horse and that kind of thing. But I think also what's
Mm-hmm.
smart about what you did is you kind of had your like goal of who you wanted to work with and where you wanted to record. And then
Mm-hmm.
knowing kind of in your head budget wise, right? Like how much is that really going to cost me? And
yeah.
And it always costs way more than anyone ever thinks.
Oh yeah.
And time wise. And then, so you recorded in Nashville, and remind
Mm-hmm.
me of your producer's name.
His name is Andrija Tokic. He is a really great kind of like nitty gritty, like rough and dirty producer. He engineers too, so he engineered the album too.
Cool.
And he's worked with some phenomenal artists, and his most noteworthy group is the Alabama Shakes. He did their first record.
Very cool.
And then a couple other ones that I love, like Langhorne Slim is another guy, Benjamin Booker, and this newer artist that I really love now. His name's Jeremy Albino. And it was funny because he actually recorded at the studio about 2 weeks after I was there.
Oh.
And I got to see him play here at the Rialto. He was opening for St. Paul and the Broken Bones. And so, but yeah, it was a cool studio, really affordable. And I just love the sounds that he captured there.
And I read that you recorded to tape.
Yeah, we did it to tape. That's one of the things that really drew me to his studio, is because he does everything to tape, or at least he prefers to. He just likes that warmth and the I don't know, the timelessness of it.
What do you think? Like, was that cool to do it like that? Like, or how'd you end up feeling about it?
It was really cool. It definitely adds a certain kind of aesthetic to the sound. I don't know if I would do it again moving forward, especially as an indie artist, because it is really expensive to do. And it's somewhat restrictive. You have 24 tracks to record on, and that's it. And some musicians these days who are doing everything digital, they're recording 60 to 100 tracks per song.
Oh my gosh,
lots of layers.
Yeah. So then another thing I want to ask is, like, when you're putting together an album and you're working with like the producer and others, there's a lot of collaboration. And I saw somewhere you said sometimes you can maybe be a perfectionist or like certain control. How is that like collaborating musically, with like a producer?
It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Going into it, he told me that, well, number one, he told me he didn't want to hear my songs in their full-fledged form, how I had kind of envisioned them, because I get pretty detailed when I'm recording the song and working on a demo. I like to do the drum parts and the keyboard and the guitar and all of these different sections. And he didn't want to hear any of that. He was just like, I want to hear the song in its stripped down form, because I don't want to get any ideas about the song when we're in the studio, because
Whoa.
he does want to produce the tracks. He wants to take them and put his spin on them. And a lot of songwriters tend to only just write the song in a bare bones form, and they need a producer to kind of like really bring it to life. Whereas I'm not so much like that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be. I went in like mentally prepared to not be so in love with these arrangements that I had come up with before.
Yeah.
And it turned out really, really nicely. And it was actually, a lot of the songs turned out somewhat similar to how I had kind of envisioned them in my head. Except for a couple tracks, he really like took them and made them into something I could have never, seen, which that was cool to see that happen.
That is really cool. So some were kind of like what you thought, and others he kind of surprised you with like a different way. But I know it's hard as a creative sometimes to like let go a little bit of like that thing you've been working on. But I know it sounds like you're very happy with how everything came out, and I think everything sounds awesome.
I was thrilled.
Your name, It's All My Fires is this album we're talking about. And one of the things too we didn't really get to talk about but in the past, who were some of your musical influences, like, and then maybe, and you mentioned some new bands that you like also, but
sure. So for me, in terms of how it's shaped my music now and my sound now, I look back to a lot of old soul artists. So people like, Otis Redding and Bill Withers and, Aretha Franklin. I love Stevie Wonder, is one of my all-time favorites. I just like really get down with that stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm not a soul artist by any means, but I just love that stuff. So you can hear those kind of influences woven throughout my album. But I also like grew up listening to the Beatles and Jimi Hendrix and like Led Zeppelin and stuff, and I'm not like a rock person either, but you can hear some of those influences too. So that doesn't answer the question super well, but I go back to those. And I mean, in terms of my entire like musical influences in my life, I've listened to God, everything. I was a punk rock kid in junior high and high school, and then really got into classic rock. And then after that, I started to drift more into like singer-songwriter stuff, and I fell in love with Bob Dylan. And it's been a long journey.
Do you notice that now, since you obviously are writing a lot more than when you were younger, like you're writing more songs, are you kind of picking up on that, and some of the artists you like now, you're really like paying attention, I guess, to their writing style, and like I guess like you're probably maybe noticing more but appreciating it more now that you write songs like that?
Yeah, definitely appreciate it more. And I do tend to listen to a lot of older stuff, but there are a lot of newer artists too that I, really love and appreciate. And songwriting's a very fascinating thing.
Yeah, I'm very visual. I'm not a writer. So I'm like in awe of good writing, and especially stuff that's kind of just so personal and unique, and well, I have another question too about music. What is like a guilty pleasure music that you're listening to right now?
Right now, I mean, nothing at the exact moment, but I do tend to enjoy like more like modern pop stuff. And it's not like I'm listening to it all the time, but I do like to get into it and kind of dissect it and figure out what's going on here.
Yeah.
Like the other day I was listening to this like big pop like dance playlist. And some of those songs are so catchy.
Yes.
And they make everybody just want to kind of move, and I think it's wise to deconstruct those songs and figure out what's going on there.
Yeah.
So I do like to delve into that stuff a lot, but I do, it's not my sound at all, but I love a lot of like, that pop stuff. And I do actually like a lot of electronic, more like there's like a group like Sylvan Esso is a group that I love.
Okay.
They're really this kind of like lo-fi indie electronic group, but they're really cool.
It's cool.
Yeah.
The other day at like one of the Westworld shows, there was just some really cool music on the show, and so I like Googled that and found out it was like some electronic music from like I think late 90s or early 2000s, and I was like, oh, this is so cool, and which made me think about for you. Have you ever written a song yet for like a movie or commercial or anything like that?
No, I mean I've not intentionally done that. And it'll probably be a long time before I'm approached to do that.
I don't know, because so Jeff wanted me to ask you that because he's working on a feature, and he's like, he's so good, and ask him if he would ever write a song for a movie. So
oh yeah, of course, I would love to. I mean, that's really something I'm very focused on at the moment, especially in the last 2 months with all the COVID-19 stuff. You know, when my income just dropped to zero, I was like, well, let's see what else I can do to make money and put my music to work. Is the film and TV world, and with sync licensing. I think you and I chatted about that about a year ago, about an artist, I can't even remember their name, that you had thought had success with that.
Oh yeah, Paula and Daniel Martin Diaz's Blind Divine. They're really good at that sort of licensing situation. Well, actually, speaking of the whole COVID stuff, I've been noticing you're doing a little bit of like live concerts and some covers. And what else have you been trying to do just to keep playing music and being out there?
Right. Yeah. So like you said, I did a couple live streams. I was fortunately asked to do a couple live concerts. I partnered with Startup Tucson and this other nonprofit called Homicide Survivors.
Okay.
Because it was like Homicide Survivors week or month or something. I can't remember. But that was great. They reached out. They said, hey, we want to hire you to do a live stream. I was like, thank you.
That's awesome.
And then also on top of that, I just need to be putting out more, videos and content, especially since I'm just hanging out at home. So I put out a couple little videos, just like little Instagram things to kind of keep people interested and engaged.
They're fun. I like the one where you change your outfit.
Yeah.
You're like scrubby, and then you're like.
Yeah, I was. I've been very much fascinated by the world of TikTok.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
That's something that's very prevalent on there. So I stole one of their pages of some of the things I've seen on there.
That's cool.
But aside from all that stuff, like I've definitely been like just sitting down at my piano or my guitar, playing, tinkering, writing here and there, and then also just hopping on my computer and putting out ideas, recording little ideas here and there to kind of like just keep creating. It's been a little bit tricky because I don't function very well. I guess I don't write very well when I'm surrounded by people. I have to be like alone and.
You mean it's hard having a family you're running around? I'm like in my son's room right now, actually. Like.
Yeah. Oh, awesome! Nice.
Yeah.
I feel like every time I sit down to devote like 10 minutes, my son comes and he's like, "Hey." The other day I was recording this piano part, and he comes over. He's just like, "Bam, bam, bam." So I'm trying. It's been fun though. It's been a blessing to have all this extra time, just with family and stuff. So
yeah, it's nice family time, and it's very interesting. And but I want to talk about too, once you finished that album and you had like a release and you did shows, what are some things that maybe musicians that have never done this before, what are some of the things you remember though, once you have an album, like what do you do after that? Like what are some things you try to do after that?
Right. So, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts and opinions about all that stuff and things that I wish I had done, but ultimately I just ran out of cash to do those things. And I feel like a lot of musicians don't market their music well enough or at all, when you think about music as a commodity or a product, you don't invent something, or you don't create a product and then it just sits there, and you have to market it. You know, you really have to spend money to get it into the people who are probably going to love it, you know, into their hands. And so the biggest thing I would say is being wise and being, and, you know, thoughtful about how you market your music before the release and after.
Yeah, I agree with that. With having my flashcards for children, is it's so much work making this product, but I think generally the public doesn't realize once you make the product just how much like continued work it is to try to promote it and get it out there. And yes, it's like living on my website, or, you know, your music's in these certain avenues, but just the effort, people don't realize how much effort is just to keep reminding people. And you also don't want to be annoying at the same time.
Sure. Yeah, it's been tricky, and even to this day, my album's been out almost a year now, and I'm still promoting it. I'm still reaching out to you know, editors and people, and it's a little too late to be written about in press, but there's still lots of opportunities for it. So me personally, I was like really looking at getting some good PR and press going into before the release date. And I got some decent stuff locally, which was wonderful. But I feel like I didn't spend enough time on it, and I also didn't have enough of a budget there to commit to PR, especially going into the release. And if you don't want to hire a PR team, that's fine. But it's really hard to get anybody to want to write about you if you don't have a serious like a PR or management or label, whatever, backing you. Because in essence, you're especially if you're a brand new artist, they don't know you, and there's no reason for them to care or write about you, especially if there's not someone that's representing you that they trust, like management and PR companies. They have these special relationships with the press who are gonna, you know, pitch them, you know, up and coming artists, and it's tough to do that if you're nobody, in essence.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the same in the movie industry and whatever. It's all those relationships that they already have, and sometimes it can cost more, but it can open doors. It's like that hard kind of balance between things. But so we're here like a year later. I had some more questions. I'm looking at my printer didn't work, so I have them. How do you think in general Tucson is or isn't supportive of your music?
You know, this is one of the questions I thought about a lot when you asked it to me. It's something that I always think about, because Tucson, I feel like for its size, has an underwhelming amount of representation, like musically speaking, outside of Tucson. And it's something I talk to a lot of music friends about. It's like, why aren't there more acts and like bands and artists that we know about that have had, you know, more nationwide success? And I don't know the answer yet. I have my theories, but at the end of the day, I'm not sure. You know, bands outside of like Calexico and you know,
there's not many.
There's not many.
Yeah.
There's a couple other smaller ones, like Run Boy Run is a band that's had pretty decent success, but they're a bluegrass band, and that's not really a part of the kind of music identity in this city, or at least it's not a big part of it. There's I'm kind of spaced out on other groups,
That's okay.
But unfortunately, there's not that many bands who have had success out of the city. And I don't know why, but I think, you know, back in like, you know, 2010, when we started to see a lot of changes happening with downtown, and, you know, a lot of revitalization, you know, going on, and people coming back to these areas and Fourth Avenue. And, you know, I think it's only been 10 years, and that's a pretty short amount of time to kind of rebuild a music community. And I wasn't super involved in it previously before 2010, but I don't recall there being a very vibrant like music scene here.
There was a little, like, that's almost more when I was playing out more. But but downtown was so different, and it was just literally like playing in like Heart 5 or something on Congress, and then just like going home. There wasn't the restaurants and the other places to hang out. It was just like almost felt ghost towny. It's like there was a club or two that you'd play at, but there was really nothing else happening. So it is neat how there's just more life down there. But how do you think Tucson could be more supportive of its musicians?
I mean, I would love if there were more venues and more opportunities for like original music. I'm very fortunate in that I can play, you know, gigs around town at, you know, restaurants and bars and stuff, but that's different than playing an original show. And I wish there were more smaller, you know, listening rooms. Like Club Congress is a great small little spot. And that's about it. You know, like there's 191 Tool is a great venue, but it's pretty big. You know, you're not going to get 400 or 500 people in there for, you know, local band playing. One of the other things I wish that I saw more is bands, you know, opening for touring acts.
Yeah.
And that's something that, you know, venues and bookers don't have a lot of control over, because, you know, some of these big artists, they already have a touring act coming with them. But it would be lovely to see more of a push to have local bands and people playing out at these venues. Especially because if there's a group coming through town that's like a specific style and that's also your style, it would be wonderful if you could collect all of the fans of that band, you know, and they go to this concert to see so-and-so, and they're like, whoa, who's this local group? I had no idea. I'm going to support them now. You know, that would be a huge, huge thing.
I think I love that idea. And I feel like I wish that maybe some of the more national acts or their management understood that could really be a win-win though. Like them supporting local talent of the local place they're going to. And then obviously the local band being like, yes, like we get to play our favorite kind of music with this band that we admire, you know, or they, you know, they play after us, but being amongst those audience and fans that like the similar style, like I think it's a great idea. Everyone should do that.
And I mean, it does happen from time to time.
Yeah.
It's just not that common.
Yeah, it seems more often, at least shows I've been to, that it's like they come with their own opener, basically.
Right.
What I wanted to ask you, what are some of, I know it's a weird time right now, but what would be your future, if everything was normal, no, I'm just kidding, or what would be some future plans for kind of you and your music right now?
I think, well, I do actually have a couple releases coming up down the pipeline. I have a single that I'm going to put out here in about 6 weeks, I think.
Awesome.
And then also a couple of ones after that. But I do want to, like, obviously continue to release music. And I do wish I could be playing more, you know, bigger venues and stuff. I should start playing in Phoenix more often and start to kind of build a little bit of a network here in the Southwest.
Yeah.
So those are some things that I want to focus on. But one of the things I'm very fascinated about, and I touched on it earlier, is the whole sync licensing thing, you know, film and TV. And for me, that's one of the few places that independent artists can actually make a pretty sizable living, actually, is getting your songs placed on shows or commercials or, you know, movies, trailers, whatever. The money's actually quite decent. And it's great exposure. Like, so that's something I'm really, you know, very focused on and trying to get connected with the right people. So it's been a lot of like networking. I've been attending a lot of webinars and Zoom meetings in the last 2 months with these different companies and music supervisors. Those are the people that actually place the songs in these films and shows. So that's their title, if you want to ever check it out.
Yeah, well, and then,
but these people are like the new gatekeepers a little bit. So they're people that are getting bombarded by, you know, us artists every day. They're like, use my song.
Yeah, you're like that. I think that's cool though. everyone's kind of forgetting we're not around people really besides like our kids or whatever. But that the fact that you're like going on webinars and trying to still like network virtually, I think that's super awesome. And I noticed too, at one of your, what song was it on in the Starbucks playlist? How did that happen?
Yeah, that was kind of that's been like my big success so far is getting the song placed in Starbucks in their rotation for all their in-store music. That was pretty cool. I've always been aware and have noticed that Starbucks has always featured music really prominently in their branding. I remember they used to have like iTunes download cards at all the Starbuckses, and recently they made a shift away from that because obviously iTunes is going down, and CDs and stuff, that's not a thing anymore. Yeah. But they shifted gears and they did a partnership with Spotify. And so I just kind of did a little research on who heads up that program at the company, and it's actually a pretty good sized team. But the original guy, who's been doing it since the late 90s, I believe, I looked him up and found his email and shot him off a message, and he actually wrote me back. He didn't say much. He just said, "Thanks for the message. I'll check out the song." And that was the last thing I heard from that guy. And about 3 months later, a separate company had reached out to me asking to use my song, and I didn't know it was related at the time, but they just said that, yeah, there's a company that wants to use your song in their stores. And I was like, okay, cool. So I signed the contract, and I was like, oh, by the way, what company was that? And they're like, oh, Starbucks requested it.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Yeah. I think that's cool. It shows also that just being proactive, like you had that goal, you kind of researched who you thought was the right person, and then just, I guess, patience also, sending something. And
it's a lot of patience. And I think I, more than most musicians, I'm very, very focused and very kind of like business minded a little bit. I get very organized and have a lot of spreadsheets and things, contact info. And, when I was doing all my PR and press, I had a whole list of press contacts and when did I email them and how many times have I emailed them. I kept track of it all.
I'm really impressed. It's good.
I read a lot of books and listen to podcasts and blogs and try to educate myself as much as possible.
That's cool. Well, it sounds like it's paid off so far, and it's gonna be exciting to hear the new release in a few more weeks. Yeah. And for our listeners, we're gonna kind of wind things down. What is the best way for them to hear your music and connect with you?
Right. So if you want to listen, it's really easy to find wherever you stream or listen to music. Just going to search for my name, Adan Townsend, and you'll see my face. The record is called All My Fires. But yeah, it's out everywhere, Spotify and Apple and Amazon, all those places. If anyone's curious, you can check out my website. Is adamtownsendmusic.com, and that'll get you to every place you could want to go, to my socials, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. I'm very easy to find. But yeah, if anyone is curious, please just go listen to the music. That's what I love, is people that just take the time to listen, because I'm having friends reach out to me like now, and they're like, "Hey, I just listened to your album. It's really good." And I'm like, "Where were you a year ago, buddy?" But everybody's busy, so I get it. And but yeah, people who just spend the time listening is wonderful. But that's about it. I mean, if you want to go a step further, you can buy my album, my CD,
hey,
all that fun stuff.
Yeah. And then for this release coming out, is this going to be audio, or are you doing a video with it also, or what's the next step?
Probably just audio. Okay. Video takes a lot of time and editing.
And people, you have to be around other people usually. So.
That's true. Yeah. So it'll just be a single release.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, thank you for spending the time with us today. And,
of course, thanks for having me. It's been fun. It's my first podcast interview.
Oh, good! Yay! Well, and our podcast is pretty new, so it's new for everyone, pretty much. So.
Awesome! I can't wait to check it out and hear the other episodes you're gonna have.
Yes, thank you. Okay, well, I'll talk to you later.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening today. This was a really fun conversation with Adan Townsend. The key lessons that stand out include planning. Adam's definitely a planner. His goal was to create a full-length album. Once he had done research about where he wanted to record and how much that would cost, he focused on putting together a crowdfunding campaign. By learning best practices and implementing unique rewards, he achieved his goal to record with a famous producer in Nashville. Trust. He was drawn to that producer and engineer in Nashville who also recorded the Alabama Shakes. He decided to record to tape for the warmth and timelessness, but had to let go of some of his preconceived musical arrangements. He went in mentally prepared to not be so in love with the songs that he already had in his head, but never could have foreseen some of the songs that producer helped him with. This shows that if you find the right professional and trust in their abilities, you will be pleased with the final product. Lastly, networking. Despite being stuck in the house, Adam continues to network and reach out to new people. He's organized and keeps track on spreadsheets about who he's reached out to and how often. His Starbucks opportunity is a great example of putting yourself out there and how something great can come from that. We appreciate you listening to the Old Pueblo New Economy podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please check out all of our episodes and series on www.oldpuebloneweconomy.com or opne.biz. While you're there, make sure you sign up for our newsletter to receive upcoming episodes as they air. If you have any suggestions for who we should interview next, make sure to send us an email. Thank you for listening and stay tuned for next week's episode.